A majority of the Supreme Court seemed weary today of a bid by two Republican led states to limit the Biden administration's interactions with social media companies, with several justices questioning the state's legal theories and factual assertions. Most of the justices appeared convinced that government officials should be able to try to persuade private companies, whether news organizations or tech platforms, not to publish information so long as the requests are not backed by coercive threats. And former President Donald Trump has not been able to get a bond to secure the $464 million judgment against him. His lawyers said that today in a court filing. Trump and his company need to post a bond for the full amount by next week in order to stop New York Attorney General Letitia James from being able to collect while he appeals. They've asked an appeals court to step in, and in the meantime, said today that they had not had any success, even though they've asked 30 to 40 of the largest insurance companies in the world to provide the bond. Now, despite not being able to get that bond, Trump has been busy. He is expected to enlist Paul Manafort. You remember him, the guy that went to jail and had all the fancy suits? He was Trump's former campaign manager, who he pardoned. Apparently, he's asked him to come on board as a campaign advisor. Now, the job that he's coming on board to do will center around the 2024 Republican convention in Milwaukee in July, and could include Manafort playing a role in fundraising for Donald Trump's presidential campaign. And the Kentucky House of Representatives voted on Friday to choke off funding. We've heard this before. Again, a state legislative body saying they don't want to fund diversity, equity, and inclusion offices at public universities. Now, this decision and this vote came after an impassioned debate that had a GOP lawmaker dismissing DEI efforts as a failure and Democrats defending them as pillars of support for students from underrepresented groups. And a groundbreaking $418 million settlement was announced on Friday by the powerful National Association of Realtors. Now, this is set to usher in a really dramatic reform to the American real estate market. And if you are a homeowner, this is important to you if you're buying or selling a home, because this settlement is going to dramatically drive down home buyers' costs and, according to some experts, will likely push some real estate brokers out of business. And from a fresh swing across Western states, Vice President Kamala Harris told NBC News that there are reasons that Latino voters should be optimistic about the economy and jobs, and feeling as if they should be supportive of a second term for Biden and Harris. During Harris's trip to Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado, she hammered uh, home President Joe Biden's State of the Union message with Latino voters. And this is all in an effort to shore up the Latino vote. She talked about policies that she said benefited Latino families, including a cap on prescription drugs for seniors, a cap on insulin prices, and the $1 billion in student loan debt forgiveness that had already benefited first generation Latino and other students. And in some good news, an emotional speech at the GLAAD Media Awards in Los Angeles on Thursday night, Oprah Winfrey, yes, the most successful woman in media, actually paid a tearful tribute to her late brother, Jeffrey Lee, who died from AIDS in 1989 when he was just 29 years old. Oprah has spent a lot of her time and has used her platform to highlight the issues of HIV/AIDS when she was on the air in her widely popular Oprah Winfrey Show from 1986 to 2011. She amplified LGBTQ voices and tried to dispel a lot of the misinformation about HIV/AIDS, which we know disproportionately affect gay and bisexual men and transgender women, as well as women of color. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, to help us break down this busy news day, are two of my favorite contributors, Michael Fauntleroy. He is a professor at George Mason University, and Alan Orr. He is an immigration attorney extraordinaire. They will be joining me in the first hour as we unpack today's news. And in hour two, that's the hour where we go behind the headlines and we bring you those stories that have people talking. Well, in this hour two today, I'm going to have my legal panel on because we're going to be breaking down some of the big decisions that happened specifically around Donald Trump over the last couple of days. There was that decision from the judge in the disqualification hearing involving Fonnie Willis and Nathan Wade. There's also a decision to postpone the hush money payment trial, the criminal trial brought by the Manhattan District Attorney against Donald Trump, and also the judge in the Florida classified documents trial issued an important ruling. I'm going to be asking my panel of attorneys not just to break down what happened with Trump and these various legal claims and lawsuits, but really I want to delve into the question about whether the judicial system, our legal system as it currently is constituted, is really set up to deal with someone like Donald Trump, because it seems like at every turn he keeps getting what appear to be the most incredible breaks ever. And it really begs the question about whether, we're going about this the wrong way. And going about this, I mean, trying to hold him accountable. So we're going to talk to my esteemed legal panel in hour two about the bigger question about Donald Trump, our judicial system, our legal system, and then break down some of those big decisions that seem to be giving Donald Trump pass after pass after pass. So make sure you stick around for hour two. But before I bring on my guests, got to talk about what Donald Trump was doing over the weekend. And if you're asking, Aretha, why are you talking about Donald Trump so much? The reason is because the country is talking about him. We're in an election year, and there's so much misinformation out there, disinformation. I actually had someone DM me and send me a story over the weekend asking me if it was true. And it was a headline with Mike Johnson on it, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. And it said, Mike Johnson said publicly somewhere that Democrats were bringing immigrants into the country, getting them registered to vote illegally, and having them vote illegally in elections throughout the country. So someone is sending me this headline asking me if this is true. And it just goes to show the kind of information that is out there that people are grappling with as they are making decisions this year about who to vote for. So that's why we're talking about Donald Trump. We're going to keep talking about Donald Trump because I think we all have an obligation to make sure people have the facts and that we do everything in our power to make sure this man does not become the president of the United States again. So, this is what Trump was up to over the weekend. He literally was at a campaign rally in Ohio. He was there to endorse a Senate candidate that's running for Senate because Ohio is about to have its primaries. And he said this. He says, if he didn't get elected in November, it's going to be a bloodbath for the country. His words, not mine, not paraphrasing. He literally said it's going to be a bloodbath for the country. Now, this is after he also said that some migrants are not people. Yes, he said they're not even humans. And he's predicting this bloodbath if he loses. Now, of course, in Donald Trump form, after the backlash from all reasonable people, he goes on to say, oh, it's the media blowing his words out of proportion. He didn't mean it. It's the crooked media. It's the woke media. It's the liberal media. And that what he was talking about really was the auto industry, right? That he was claiming that if Joe Biden didn't do something with respect to the economy, that the auto industry was going to witness this bloodbath. Now, really, really, Donald Trump, you want us to believe this impassioned speech, this impassioned statement that you gave about a bloodbath was really only about cars. Now, we are all smart enough to know this had nothing to do with cars. And we also know, had Joe Biden made a comment about there being a bloodbath if he didn't win the election, we know there would have been outrage from every corner of the universe. Republicans, far and wide, would have been up in arms, would have been saying that this is disqualifying, that he's not fit to be in office. They would have denounced him. Even Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and others would have been asking, what is going on with Joe Biden? That's not how we talk about the election in this country. When you lose, you lose. And when you win, you win. You don't threaten a bloodbath. You don't threaten the people that don't vote for you, basically telling the world that 50% of us that voted against him might find ourselves dead if Donald Trump doesn't win. But we didn't see that from Republicans. We didn't see Republicans denouncing him. We didn't see the outrage. We saw the spin. We saw folks saying, oh, that's Donald Trump. He didn't mean it. Oh, he was talking about something else. The media is always quick to jump on his statements. We always want to make more about his statements. That's what we're seeing from Republicans. These cowards, these individuals who have allowed this man to co-opt their party and will pretty much stand for anything that he says and does. And we've watched this time and time again. The reality is Trump has told us in no uncertain terms what kind of president he will be. He has told us that he will stop at nothing to win again, because for him, this is so personal. This is his way of staying out of jail. This is his way of getting all of these legal cases dismissed against him. So he is literally fighting for his life. And that's why he is making statements like that, because he is trying to rile up his base and frighten people into voting for him. And anyone that's in public office, that's been voted into public office, should be alarmed. Anyone that votes for anyone in public office should be alarmed. And we should all use this and never, ever forget this. And if there's any reason we were thinking about voting for Donald Trump, he has just given us yet another reason not to. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard mama hates anyway?
Since 77, I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer. So I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
Around here, we don't believe in victimhood. We believe in raising our voices, amplifying Black voices in the climate conversation. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're looking for the most epic place on earth, let's start at the base of a massive waterfall. Then trek through the thick jungle. Then climb to the peak of a snowy mountaintop. Then once you get there, keep going. Because with intelligent 4x4 and 7 drive modes and a Nissan Pathfinder, the search is the real adventure.
Available feature. Intelligent 4x4 cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions.
The way we spin our...
We are back, and joining me in this hour is Alan Orr and Dr. Michael Fontroy. Let me start with you, Professor. Trump has effectively secured a major party's nomination for president, and soon it's going to be up to voters who are watching many of these polls. The polls say either Biden and Trump are neck and neck, and some polls even have Trump slightly ahead of Biden. Why are voters still sticking with this guy when he is making it clear that he's ready to rain down like the most incredible violence we can imagine if he is elected president? And the whole world is watching and apparently not up in arms about it the way I am.
Right. So I think part of it requires us to look at the people who are actually supporting him. They're looking for somebody to reinforce their views about white supremacy. They're looking for somebody who will at least give voice to their anger and hostility. They're looking for somebody who will say, no, it's not your fault that you're like this, it's their fault. And so from that flows a whole bunch of public policy positions that represent an existential threat, in my view, to Black people in particular, but progressives, you run the laundry list. Now, having said all that, I know what the polls say. I also know that he lost by about 7 million votes in 2020. And I haven't seen any evidence that he's going to make up those votes in the states that he lost. Now, in the states that he already won, he may run up the score in those. But when you look at it on a state-to-state basis, I'm not sure he's as strong as people seem to think he is. And we still haven't gotten the testimony in these upcoming trials. If any of them start before November, that could move things too. But I share your frustration, Areva. I don't quite get it in terms of trying to think about it logically, because this isn't logical. But we do see that there are some people that love this guy, even though he's an authoritarian racist who was very bad at his job the last go round.
Yeah, and the reason, Michael and Alan, I keep talking about this is because of those people that do seem to love him and people who are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if you saw this story, Alan, but it's the father of the murdered Georgia student. He's upset that his daughter is being used, her murder is being used, politically by both parties. We saw was it Marjorie Taylor Greene at the State of the Union give Joe Biden some kind of button or pin with this young lady's picture or something on it. And then Joe Biden mentioned her in the speech. And the dad is speaking out saying, this is my daughter. She lost her life. This is a tragedy. And we can empathize with him having lost his daughter. But he said he's supporting Donald Trump. And I was like, I was with him. And then I read that about him. So here is this dad, and maybe for him, because they've made this story about, folks coming across the border that killed his daughter. But there are people, I guess Laken Riley, that's the young lady that lost her life. Mm-hmm. Her dad said he's with Donald Trump.
Right. I did see the interview. I thought he did an okay job. I mean, the mother of the slave victim was also taking pictures with Trump at Mar-a-Lago or somewhere in Atlanta with her new husband and then the rest of her family. I just don't think holding that case out as an example of what immigration is and the problems of immigration just aren't true, because it's a highly unlikely case among the other cases that happen in the United States that you sort of read about that have these type of murders that go unkept and unsolved. So I think that's hard, but I think we should remember how the Trump machine works. Make a villain, make that villain an immigrant, ride down an escalator, fear, 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 and I'm going to solve that. But I think we also should remember that there's already been a President Trump, so we know what he will do and is capable of doing. And the last time there was a President Trump and he had a Senate majority and a House majority, he did not pass immigration reform. So why do you believe he's going to do something differently this time than he did last time?
Well, he the claim now is one, migrants aren't people. So he's talking about them as if they're not even human. And I read somewhere where he said he's going to go, around the country, just kind of round up and start deporting. He does these, he makes these most extreme statements about things, right, that he's going to do. He's going to shut down the border. He's going to round up immigrants and deport them, which I would think, Michael, we know he's not going to do it. But even if he's saying that, and if you are an immigrant or you have family members that are immigrant, wouldn't you be like the most anti-Trump demographic possible? I don't know. Like, Michael, what are you thinking? I think I may have lost your.
No, that was my fault. I'm sorry. Yes, and it might be difficult to do something about it if you aren't registered to vote and aren't energized by that issue. There's a real curious mix of his sort of demographic support. He somehow has been able to attract evangelical Christians, even though he's perhaps the least Christian president of our memory, right? He's been able to make some inroads with Latino groups across the country, notwithstanding the fact that he's using them as a piñata on a daily basis. And so I think ultimately, as we get closer to election day and the rhetoric heats up like it likely will do, I think we'll see that some of that support begins to recede. And I know we may not have time to talk about it, but I think Mike Pence just took the first step toward a more aggressive stance toward Trump for the rest of the year, because I think he understands what's going on too.
My goodness, what took Mike Pence? I'm glad you brought that up. What took did the wife threaten to leave him? Did she say, you better not? I mean, like, what happened? I'm just curious. I wish we could be a fly on the wall. Mike Pence, who stood by him after he heard him, knew that he was encouraging these insurrectionists to try to literally kill him. What do you think happened, Professor, with regards to Mike Pence and the refusal to endorse?
Well, let me start by saying I'm not going to clap it up too loud for this guy, because he has enabled an awful lot of Trump's worst behavior while he was serving as vice president. So I mean, even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So let's begin there. I think, though, that this may well be the first step toward some cleansing of his own reputation, if you will, and also understanding that 4 years of Trump would be bad news for the country. Look, I don't expect him to announce an endorsement of Joe Biden, but I do think if he continues to have some regular intermittent activity around the country, speaking to voter education or those kinds of things, you might see him be able to turn some votes in one state or another, and that could be enough to move it from a Trump column to a Biden column.
And what do you make, Alan, of the way Trump is conducting these rallies? I talked about the one he had over the weekend. He starts these rallies with this audio of in jailed, imprisoned, incarcerated insurrectionists singing. He has promised to pardon all of them, and even drawing the opposition of some Republican senators. But he's making it pretty clear, again, presumably to try to persuade these people's relatives to vote for him, that he's going to open the jail cells for all these insurrectionists. That's going to be one priority, he said.
So I think it's a messaging. I mean, it's in DC, this is what we'd call a messaging act, where he's just saying these things and having this music played to sort of gym up his base to say, I'm speaking to you without speaking to you in your exact language. I also think we must understand that there's a divide in the Hispanic community. When you look at Florida, for example, you will find a lot of Venezuelans and Cubans that are diehard Republicans and that are supporting Trump because they're saying those immigrants are not like me. I'm different. I did it the right way. Whatever their claim is. And so there's this great divide that's building, even in the Black community, where 1 in 10 Black people in this country are immigrants. We now have Black people in Chicago and New York saying, I'm not voting for Biden because these Black immigrants are coming here. So it's a weird world where he's able to divide people and constantly turn them against one another. That's really his key. But remember this, he's broke and the RNC is broke, right? He is 91 times indicted. He has 2 outstanding law claims against him, and he has no power here. We have seen behind the curtain. There is no business plan. He is house poor.
No, it's such a great point. When the largest insurance company in the world considers you to be a credit risk, and now the so-called billionaire who, remember, bragged when he was running the first time about not having any of the issues that other folks running for office would have. He's not going to be bought. He's not going to be susceptible to big money donors because he was going to fund his own campaign because he had all this money. And he posted that bond for E. Jean Carroll. He was able to pull that one out, but he cannot find anyone for this $400 million plus bond. He is broke. The RNC is broke. They've laid off tons of people. Laura Trump is in there now, I guess, to try to raise more money for this for his legal fees, not so much even his campaign. But yet he still has those diehard voters, those insurrectionists, for sure, are hoping that he gets elected so he can open the jails and let them out. When we come forward, more on today's hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court, as well as Kamala Harris is making her rounds throughout Western states. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Time is the right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Former President Donald Trump is unable to secure the $464 million fraud judgment against him in New York. Trump needs to post bond by next week, or New York Attorney General Letitia James can start collecting during the appeals process. According to legal documents filed, his legal team is asking the appeals court to step in, adding finding a bond is practically impossible. Meantime, his attorneys also say that even though he can't afford the bond, they argue James, who is Black, doesn't need to worry about collecting the judgment in the case. Kanye West says over $1 million worth of Yeezy clothes were stolen from his Los Angeles warehouse. His chief of staff reported 60,000 pieces of clothing were taken from the facility. While they're not entirely sure where the clothes went or who took them, there are allegedly several suspects police are looking into. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Drive safe this evening over in Griffith Park's 134 East at Forest Lawn Drive. Watch for an accident currently blocking the carpool lane. The stop traffic coming from Bob Hope Drive. In Glendora, a crash remains on the right shoulder of the 210 West before Sunflower Avenue, and watch for a slight delay running heavy from San Dimas. A motorcyclist is down on the 405 North in West LA before the 10 in the Sunny Divide, causing heavy traffic flow in the area. And if you're over in Orange Crest on the 57 South before the 522 freeway, CHP and a tow truck are on scene due to an accident on the right shoulder.
Shop modern, Nordic-inspired furniture and decor for your whole home at Scandinavian Designs. And get your favorite spaces refreshed for the new year. Shop one of their 5 Los Angeles locations or shop online at ScandinavianDesigns.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
For all the HBCU alumni in the LA area who went to Howard, Grambling, Jackson State, or Norfolk State, here's a schedule rundown to follow your school in the NCAA basketball tournament. Tuesday afternoon at 3:40, the Howard men's team takes on Wagner in a play-in game in Dayton, Ohio. You can watch that game live on True TV. Wednesday afternoon at 3:40, Grambling will battle Montana State in Dayton. Live coverage also for this one on True TV. First NCAA tournament game in school history for Grambling. In the NCAA women's tournament, Norfolk State is at Stanford Friday night, 7 p.m. tip-off on ESPN2. Saturday morning at 10 a.m., Jackson State plays Connecticut, a major exposure opportunity for Jackson State. Saturday's game will be broadcast live on ABC. Stay with us at KBLA for all the HBCU updates during March Madness. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app And find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you missed any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader.
Following the leader.
Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
In the heart of California, where innovation thrives, access to high-speed internet is important to every family and business. Cal Broadband is the state's leading expert in the development and deployment of broadband infrastructure. Each day, we work to help advance the right policies that will expand the opportunities of reliable, high-speed internet to every community in our Golden State. Cal Broadband is working hard to connect California. Visit calbroadband.org for more information. That's calbroadband.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Single Moms Planet is a nonprofit organization dedicated to uplifting under-resourced single mom business owners and working mothers nationwide. Single Moms Planet offers comprehensive programs of financial literacy, business development, mentorship, and entrepreneurial training. They provide education, accountability, and hope. Single Moms Planet was founded by model, TV personality, and producer Nefertiri Plessy. Nefertiri felt firsthand the challenges that face single moms as she was raised by a working single mother. She learned that the most disadvantaged group in the United States are single mom families. According to the U.S. Census, 30% live under the poverty line. So she decided to do something about it, along with co-founder Cole Patterson. Their goal is to end the poverty cycle in single mother households through education, opportunity, and networking, providing family and child enrichment programs for under-resourced single-parent families. Single Moms Planet serves over 10,000 single moms and their children each year. Studies show that business development and financial literacy provide a positive environment for children and families, exposing them to new possibilities and opportunities. To attend one of their fun events, make a donation, or get more information, or if you need help as a single mom, please visit singlemomsplanet.org. That's singlemomsplanet.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Michael Fauntroy and Alan Orr are joining me in this hour. And in hour two, we're going to be talking about Trump's legal woes. We know that his team of attorneys have filed an appeal of the judge's decision that basically allowed Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney, to remain on the case prosecuting Donald Trump, presuming that Nathan Wade, the special counsel, agreed to resign, and Wade did resign. But Trump's team says that's not enough. They want Fani Willis and the entire district attorney's office disqualified from moving forward with the prosecution of Donald Trump and co-defendants. So in hour two, we're going to be talking about that and the other woes that Trump has legally, including his inability to secure a $464 million bond for the fraud judgment obtained against him by Letitia James. And we're going to be asking the bigger question about whether the legal and judicial system, whether these two systems are set up to deal with someone like Donald Trump. So all of that in hour two, so make sure you stick around. But in this hour, we're talking about today's breaking and trending news. And there is more news other than Donald Trump. And one of the stories that caught my attention, Michael and Alan, is this Kentucky House vote on Friday, another decision by a state legislative body to end funding for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And now there are more than 30 states that have introduced bills banning or attempting to limit DEI initiatives. What is going on, Alan? Is DEI going the way of affirmative action in college admissions?
Pretty much it's gone in that space until it's redefined in a new space, because people don't see it as inclusion of everyone anymore. They see it as specific programs, and it's under attack by very rich people who are suing for specific programs that were made to do the remedy. And for people who don't sort of follow the line of conversation with regards to it, was For so many years, people were discriminated based on their race. The only way that you can fix that is to have programs that address the race sufficiency to make them whole in the process. So that's the legal argument for many of these programs. But now in this new colorblind society that we're supposed to have, where everyone is now equal, people see it as an opportunity to say, well, let's defund and walk away from this. While the numbers, right, because I think that's also important, the color of America is changing and will be brown by 2026. And a lot of these programs that people are taking away is to sort of hamper that growth and that access to power and control, because that's what it's really about, is access. Because when you think about the founders of companies now as David, Mark, and John, right? It's the same white guys it was back in the 70s and the 60s and the 40s.
And it seems like, Michael, they're in a mad rush, a race, because they know this number that Alan just quoted about the browning of the country. So it's like, let's do everything we can to dismantle every right, every program that was created to address, the vestiges of slavery, so that when that browning does happen, either we're starting all over at ground zero, or, they've convinced us somehow with this gaslighting that we don't need these programs. And universities, you're at a university. I mean, this is really scary stuff.
Right.
For colleges.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I teach in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which in recent years has become purplish or bluish, depending on your viewpoint. This is not nearly the cradle of the Confederacy that it used to be. But let's not get it twisted. There are members of the state legislature that are still fighting the Civil War. And these policy changes that you referenced in 30 different states around the country are coming for Virginia too. And if the public universities in Kentucky, in terms of their overall board structure, are set up similarly to those in Virginia, what you see is every year on July 1st, a new X number of board seats change hands. And in the case of Virginia, where I am, that means they go from a Democratic governor who appointed them in the last term to a Republican governor who, were it not for the fact that Ron DeSantis had gone, sort of 100 miles an hour on this, might be getting a lot more attention than he is. Yes, there's a target on public institutions across the country in this regard. Alan's right in terms of the litigation that we're seeing at private institutions. And I think the ultimate goal, as you all rightly put it out, in addition to how you all structured it, is also about trying to hobble and maim and make otherwise ineffective any kind of attempts to try to bring about systemic change and responding to the institutional racism that still exists in this country.
Well, they're actually trying to convince us, and Nicole Hannah Jones, a really brilliant piece in the New York Times. It was lengthy, so you needed to set aside some time to read it. But they're really trying to convince us that there is no systemic racism. We don't need these programs, that we've already achieved Dr. King's dream of being this colorblind society. And if you say there is a problem, then you are the racist, right? So if you raise the issue of race, oh my God, there's all this outrage. Like, how can you say that? They point to a couple of examples of people who have been incredibly successful. That's the scary part. Alan, are people believing this? Because if you keep repeating something over and over and over again, sometimes it does sink in. And even if it's a lie, we know a lie can be very, very powerful. Words matter. And I'll give you an example. I was at a women's Women's Month celebration yesterday, and there was a woman who had been invited to be a panelist on this panel talking about successful women. And this is a woman who made television programming in the 80s and 90s, very, very super successful. Not someone who did it with diversity, not a lot of diverse actors or folks in front of or behind the camera, but she was there as if she is representing diversity. So there is this subtle way that people can almost cause you to think you're like the crazy person, right? Like, isn't that the woman that didn't have any minorities in her show? But now she is being held out as someone who is a champion for diversity. So, what do you make of that? I mean, because this can be confusing for people.
I think it's minority politics in a different reverse way in which you sort of become the victim in all circumstances. And the only way you're able to do that is you remove the history part. So removing Black history and the concept of racism is important to the argument of saying, now you're being racist against me. So they go together as a pair. And you see this happening over and over again, even with women's rights. I mean, I say, I was born in the 70s, but in 1973, women couldn't get a credit card without a man signing for them in my lifespan. And how quick women have forgot about this in the progressive movement when we're talking about women's right, abortion, health care, individual care, that it's like, oh yeah, we can trust them all of a sudden. It's a very curious position for me to be in. Also with our democracy, right? The democracy has been there like gravity, and all of a sudden people think, oh, it'll never go away. And all of a sudden it's chipping away at every block. You think, and this is something I talk to Black people about. We keep thinking the court is going to save us from Donald Trump. The court was never going to save us from Donald Trump. No matter what the court decides, that's not going to change that many opinions about him.
Something interesting. You probably read this, Alex. I think you and I read the most, hard to find articles that most people don't even find. This was an article about the Christian right and how it is splintering. This whole, the evangelicals are splintering, and there's this whole thing of racy and sexy, Christian pinup girls almost, or women. Yeah. And there's some traditionalists who, of course, are outraged by that, but others who are embracing it as their way of fighting back against transgender people, because what they're saying is they want not to blur the lines of gender identity. So if we have sexy women and we have men who are, oohing and ahhing over these sexy women, then everybody's clear, right? Everybody's in their lane. So we have men who are lusting after women who are subjecting themselves to men and subjugating themselves to men. Then we don't have to deal with this transgender stuff.
Absolutely.
And that was I was like,
they're banning, they just banned Pornhub in Texas. So there you go. You have the playbook of the control. And I want people to understand, trans people are probably 1% of the population. You are more likely to be struck by lightning than to have a problem with the trans person, just in number and population. So remove yourself from that thought, right? 1%, probably less than 1% of the population overall. So if that's changing you, that 1% is a threat, you have to make that enemy. But at the same time, once again, they're telling you, oh, you can't watch porn in Texas. You can't watch porn in North Carolina because children are going to have access to this. And I think to myself, do they have cable? Right? What is HBO? What are all those? I mean, things that I grew up as a kid in Georgia, I would never be able to see are now everywhere. It's bizarre to me.
Or they've made trans people, the boogeyman, this
the predator is what they made them. Right? They're the reason that people have these things where they act out. Right? When in Florida, you have them having 3 ways, but telling you can't watch porn and trans people are bad.
Right. But going so far as to say that having a woman in what would otherwise be a very promiscuous outfit and pose now being the symbol of white evangelical people, because that woman is in that traditional role, right? And that way we get to continue to promote patriarchy, white male patriarchy, because a good old white male is supposed to lust after a sexy woman. I was like, okay, this stuff is
really... exactly. And a young boy is supposed to, right? Because that's what it is, objectification. It's hard to find that balance and that mix in that group to have that conversation. But on both ends, they're still blocking out things and changing things. And grooming is the word that they try to use, that they're grooming.
But these are the Bible thumpers. These are the Bible thumpers who are telling the women, take your clothes off. That way we know you're a traditional woman, and then we can lust after you. And that's what God wanted us to be, like lustful men and subjugated women. Okay, it's really deep. We're going to come back and talk about Vice President Kamala Harris and what she's saying to Latino voters in Western states. And are they listening? Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
LADWP is proud to partner with KBLA to share with you how to start the new year without bill worries. We're here to help if you're behind on your bill or need help staying current. Sign up anytime online for Level Pay to set predictable monthly payments throughout the year, including for past due amounts. You can also check out the special extended pay arrangements of up to 48 months to help pay down your bill. If you're a senior or income qualified, you may be eligible for Easy Save to receive discounts and also qualify for free and discounted energy and water saving devices. You can get up to $15,000 for past due water and or sewer bills and up to $3,000 for electric bills. But you got to act fast. Funding is limited. You can reduce your past due bills and kick off the year right, because here at LADWP, we're here to help. Visit ladwp.com/cares today and find out more. Hey, LA, when you're trying to get where you need to go, like work, school, and what matters to you, Metro is here to get you there. With discounted fares and free pass programs, Metro is making public transportation affordable and easy to ride for everyone. Plan your trip at metro.net.
If we're the ones disproportionately impacted by these climate catastrophes,
Why should we be silent?
turning up the volume all year long on the climate conversation for KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
All right, we are back, and our vice president was in Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado, and she was there to hammer home President Biden's State of the Union message with Latino voters, who we know are going to be critical. They are critical to every election. Let's talk about Latino voters. Alan, you do a lot of work. You're an immigration attorney, obviously, so you work with folks from different countries who are trying to come into the United States, or those who are here who are trying to stay. Now, one of the things Harris wanted to hit on, or she did hit on during these visits, is prescription drug caps that we know are now being challenged in courts by some big pharma companies. She also hit on the student loan debt that had been relieved by the president, over $1 billion. Many of those debts of first-time college goers, including a lot of Latinos, and talked about the investment in Latino businesses, the jobs, the kind of laundry list of things that the Biden and Harris administration have done, but isn't necessarily resonating with all voters. What do you think, based on the work you've done in immigration, is going to be really important for the Biden-Harris administration in order to win over Latino voters?
I think it's the same thing we found in Black communities, that people don't feel touched by the economic benefits that have occurred after coming outside of COVID, that they're looking for, a magic moment where all of a sudden everything's going to be fixed and they don't realize how it is. And also, people outside of education, like the professor, are doing comparative worldwide, right? Worldwide, we are killing it on the worldwide stage. And so people sort of need to move in that space. And people have their grievances related to what he hasn't been able to do in immigration because he doesn't have the Congress to sort of push things through. So I think it's important for her to have the conversation, to be in the community, to listen, exactly like they're doing with the Muslim population, exactly like they're doing with the African population, to listen, to be visible, to say, if I'm giving this opportunity, this is what I'll do if you give me the House. I think that's the most important thing from the State of the Union, that actual Biden did say, I need the Congress to get these things done because I'm only part of the three branches of government.
Yeah, and I don't want to, Michael, paint the Latino community as if it's one big monolith, although the news reports on it as if it is, just like the African American community is not monolithic. But I think most people see experience with a lot of Latinos. They lump them in with low income communities. They see them living, in low income communities, doing labor type jobs as waiters and cooks and etc. So there's this sense that they should be liberal when we know there are a lot of conservative Latinos. Some very religiously conservative, so on things like abortion, and others who've come from countries with dictators are buying into this notion that somehow Biden is becoming a dictator. What's your thoughts about the way that Biden and Harris should be trying to address these various segments within the Latino population?
Well, remember 2 weeks ago when we last talked, I mentioned that sometimes there are segments of the African American community that has unrealistic expectations about what President Biden can or can't do or should or shouldn't do. Well, I think that there's segments of all populations within the United States that have some of that. And I think our Latino brothers and sisters are no different. Add to that, as you alluded to, sort of the religious conservative, cultural conservative parts of that, and you have what I think to be a pretty difficult nut to crack for Vice President Harris in this regard. Alan talked about immigrants from socialist countries from Central and South America coming to the United States. Well, some of them, and this gets back to the cultural piece I mentioned a moment ago, have certain kind of views about what women should and shouldn't do. And I would imagine that could help to explain why some might be a little reticent to just jump on board with Biden Harris, just as there are people in numerous parts of the country that have similar feelings about the role of women in politics and leadership and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I know that bravado that Trump just, he just really connects with a lot of male voters and those voters who do have this notion about the role of women and men, like you were talking about, promoting the patriarchy. Before I let you go, though, let's talk real briefly, Alan, about this Supreme Court hearing today. No decision, but the court's questioning in this case about whether the government can tell social media platforms, what they can and can't print or post. This was all about trying to control some of the disinformation that we know social media platforms are notorious for spreading. And two Republican-led states trying to limit Biden's interaction with social media companies. The justices didn't seem to be buying the arguments of these two Republican-led states. And I'm thinking they have to be thinking long-term that when you have a Republican in office, they're going to want that Republican administration to have some degree of, power to intervene with these companies.
Yeah, I think they're out of their depth, to be honest about it. This concept, the concept of liberty is within the wheelhouse of the Constitution, but this new world of the internet and how we're going to police it and control the language and the information that's shared on it and who owns it, right? That's a major issue right now. Who's going to own all these platforms? Much like we lost radio to conservative individuals that sort of took over the United States. How this messaging is going to happen. So I think that they're concerned about that and that they did see the other side, exactly what you said today. And also, I will also say that the Supreme Court today did something that I needed them to do, which was to continue a hold on Texas SB4 law, which is basically a show me your papers law that was going to go into effect in Texas today at 4:00, which should have never been a consideration before the Supreme Court in the first place. But what we are finding, or we're expressing ourselves to find, is that Amy Coney Barrett might not be the starch conservative that we thought she was going to be, and that she's a little bit more entrenched with tradition and the way things have been than we thought she was going to be about, let's just change everything. She might have had a singular mission with regards to the abortion, but outside of that, she's dancing a little bit longer, closer to the line of looking at the long haul of her tradition and American tradition.
Yeah, some folks are wondering, does she just want to be with the ladies? Like, is she too tired of the patriarchy? Is she rejecting the patriarchy? And maybe she just want to fall in line with those white men, because we have to remember white women suffer the wrath of white men too. They vote with them and they ride with them, but white men are pretty hard on just about everybody. So she probably has had her fair share of being, dismissed as a babe and not being taken seriously. So maybe this is her way.
And mansplain the law to her.
Oh, absolutely. So we can't forget. Like you, I'm surprised, I should say, by how she is asserting what appears to be a lot more independence and not just parroting. Uh, she has definitely not become a Clarence Thomas or an Alito, which is good for the country and may end up, surprising us on a lot of different fronts, which is,
She
again,
does have black children. I will remind people of that all the time. Children that are coming to an age. Her children were sort of small before, and I think now they're like in their teens, maybe. So it's a reality when it's family.
Yeah, and everybody thought that because she had those black children, that perhaps she would be more progressive. But we know black children growing
Yeah,
up
it's not a symbol, right? Sometimes it's just a status. Gotcha.
yeah, depending on who the aunties and uncles and cousins and classmates are. And let's face it, that's got to be rough when you're a black kid growing up in a white family. I know adults that have done that, and even though the parents may love them, the world is cruel. The world does not like families that don't look, like we like to think families should look. Real quickly, Oprah Winfrey getting this big award from GLAAD because of her advocacy on the issue of HIV/AIDS. Her brother, I forgot she had a brother that died of AIDS.
Long
Any
time
thoughts
ago.
on that, Michael?
This reminds me just how long Oprah's been on the scene, right? And I don't mean that disparagingly. I just mean how long she's been part of the cultural zeitgeist. And for her to win this award at this point in her life and to give the expressions that she did upon receiving them really do in some respects reflect how you can come from certain circumstances and go to certain places, but in some ways you're always the person you once were. And this helps, from my perspective at least, this is a sort of another reminder of, you're always with family.
Yes, and on that note, we will end. Yes, Miss Oprah Winfrey has been around a long time, and she's been using that platform for good. So kudos to you, Oprah, on that big award. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much, Alan. Always a pleasure to be in conversation
My pleasure.
with you. When we come forward, more of Trump legal woes and questioning whether this legal system can even deal with someone as difficult as the former president, that is. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.